with OTR Capital. We're here tonight for another segment of So You Think You Can Truck. I'm with Drew Herpich, NTG's Chief Commercial Officer. Drew, I am so glad we've met. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Can you give everyone a little bit of an introduction to your background?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on here too as well, Grace. I'm Drew Herpich, CCO of NTG Freight. I've been with NTG for a little bit over a year now. What I'm really focusing on at NTG is two-pronged. One, obviously our large enterprise customers. Think about your Fortune 500 customers out there. And the second big thing that we're here to talk a little bit about here today is just our carrier sales effort and how we're going forward with that.
Yeah, we want to talk tonight about how to maximize in this market, and I know carrier relationships are very important to you at NTG. You've been in the industry for how many years?
I'm going on my 15th year actually here in the industry.
And what do you love most about it?
Yeah, that's a great question actually, and it's one of those things I think about a lot. Over the last year, the one thing I think about this industry in general is just this job security, right? The things that we're doing to really move, America and the economy going forward. But the one thing that I think about all the time is, all the customers that we work with, some of the cool things that we get to be able to do, right? I think about large customers that do disaster relief, and you're getting water loads to families, or some of the projects that we're working on that are building bridges or infrastructure across the country. It's really cool to see some of the results that come out of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for watching tonight. We've got some fun things to talk about. I see you, Delmar and Jory. Brandon, thanks for joining us. We are live, so if you have questions or comments for Drew or myself, please feel free to leave them. Let's start a little bit with a market rundown. I think it's no secret things are great, but from the broker perspective, what are you seeing? What's going on? Give us a little bit of your thought.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been one of the crazier markets that I've seen. When I thought the golden year was always going to be 2018, 2021 might be replacing it. It's been one of those years where you think about just spot freight. Yeah. It just is going to continue to run. And the one thing that we've seen is just really the impact from a demand standpoint, right? And the other fact that we always look at is really the supply standpoint. And as we look at Class 8 truck orders and as we go through this next year, the big thing that we're seeing is supply can't get into the market fast enough. And the demand is outpacing it where we are right now today, causing this big spot market that we've seen in 2021.
Do you think that there's a driver shortage? I mean, I know personally we see new entrants into the market every day. There's new authorities, new MCs getting set up. Is there a driver shortage?
This has been a question for the last 15 years, right? And I've heard about it all the time. The driver age remains at 55-year-old age. But the big thing I think that's happened this year that's been a little bit different from most years when we talk about that driver shortage is really just the workforce in general, right? It's not even just the drivers out there, it's an entire workforce. When you think about when you drive up and down the road, every single business has a now hiring sign. And so I think it's one of those things where I don't know if there's a driver shortage or if the drivers have come off the road to do different types of work, whether it be local work or doing some of the things that they can from a manual labor standpoint to stay closer to home and be with their families. So I think the one thing that I would say is, driving a truck is the number one job in America. Over 3.5 million people are driving a truck. At the same time, though, too, I think there's been other ways that they can stay home and stay locally with their families that has just taken out some of that work.
Right. Great point. Do you think if rates are as high as they are at this point, if you're a driver out there on the road and you're running, great freight and hauling, do you get into a contract? Do you think that rates are still going up? Do you lock yourself in? Do you not?
Yeah, it's been the one question I've gotten asked in the last 6 months more than ever is, should I buy a truck? And I think the one thing that I would say to carriers right now, rates are some of the highest rates we've ever seen, right? From a year-over-year perspective, we're seeing things from a cost per mile almost $1 a mile over. Mm-hmm. And so yes, absolutely. If I was a carrier looking right now, this is a great market to get into. The one thing that I would always say though is err on the side of caution, right? When things are good, things will obviously change eventually. And the biggest thing that we've always seen in this market is these cycles that we go through. And right now, we're in one of those cycles where rates are the highest, supply is out, and the biggest thing you start to see is these drivers try to buy trucks. The big thing that we don't see on the back end is how long this takes to get into the market. Mm-hmm. You buy a truck today, you're not going to have that truck on the road for at least 8 months. And some of the things we've seen from a manufacturing standpoint, the chip shortage, it's taking 12 to 14 months to get to this truck. Now you're going into that next cycle, and are those rates the same where they were before?
Do you think that the spot market will sustain at this rate in 2022, through?
I'm a big believer that you hit, tops. I think we're at that right now when I look at where we need to come down. And this is one of the things too, right? it's never a light switch. It's always a faucet, right? This takes time for these trucks and supply to get into the market. But where I think we are right now, even if we came down 10, 15%, we'd still be at highs that are higher than 2018.
Right.
So we have a while to come down till we get to more of that capacity coming into the market. But I think it's one of those things that eventually rates will come back to normal. I had a conversation with a couple people the other day, and it was funny. 3 months ago, if you asked anybody, spot rates were going to run forever. It's going to be one of those things that was going to continue. No way supply is going to catch up. Now you come to today, some of the shorts are coming into the market. You start hearing people say, hey, I might start getting more aggressive on contract comes towards the end of the year going into 2022. And that really starts kind of that next cycle because people are going to get aggressive to go after that contract knowing that spot won't last forever.
Right. Well, I was debating with a partner the other day, what is a normal rate anymore? I mean, some of these rates we've seen, it's like, whew, even if you came off, a few $100s, it's still high.
Well,
what's normal?
Yeah, the age-old thing out there in the industry has always been, how much does it cost to run a truck, right? And a bunch of different, publications out there. But let's say it costs $2 to run a truck, right? Your equipment, the driver, everything that goes into that. And if you're making $210, $215, that was always a really good living for a trucking driver. I'm seeing rates somewhere in the $275, $3 a mile. And so those are things that right now are obviously advantageous to the carrier.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know, we're seeing it. We are thrilled for the carrier. We've seen down markets. We've seen up for them. We're always thrilled when our carriers are succeeding and doing well and being paid healthily. And they certainly are. We're growing. Are you guys growing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have been too. I took a little time. We hired a new class of new hires at OTR a few weeks ago. And on their second day, I got a hold of them. Let's see what they know about trucking. We have a bunch of new hires and we're going to ask them some questions about trucking today. Let's see how much they know. Your name?
Tanner.
Tanner.
Yes.
Thanks for being here today. Got a question for you. Okay, what does OTR stand for?
OTR stands for over the road. Oreo Transport Region. Offering trucking rates.
Over the ridge.
Off the road.
Beautiful.
Capital.
Over the road.
Over the road.
Over the road.
Over the road.
Over the road. On the road. What is the phalange on a truck?
I have 0.
Front of the truck. The bottom. The bottom.
I'm gonna go with on the back.
On the back. Located at the front of the truck. What is a chassis?
A who?
Chassis.
Is that like? What does that have to do with?
Trucking. What is a chassis?
It's a girl I dated in high school.
Is it a part of the truck?
The chassis is that huge front centerpiece that you see on trucks.
Yeah.
Connecting cords, right?
Yeah, connect. Yes.
Is that
Yes.
really it?
Yes. No, it's not.
I don't know, it might be on the back side of the cabin.
The state abbreviation, AK. Which state is that? That's okay. Arkansas?
Arkansas.
Arkansas. Arkansas?
Arizona. Alaska.
Alaska. Which president do you think had the most influence on trucking? Bush.
Go Dwight Eisenhower.
Let's say Bill Clinton?
Roosevelt.
Bush or Reagan? One of the Bushes?
FDR, I guess.
The president that had the most influence on trucking was Eisenhower.
This was super fun. The good news is this is day 3 of their training, so we've got a lot of time to help them learn state abbreviations and trucking terminology. That was fun. Drew, do you know where the left phalange is?
Don't do this.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's not really a thing. We're teaching and everything's evolving in trucking as usual. Technology being one of those. Things are always changing. How we book freight, how we get carriers. I want to talk a little bit about digital load tracking.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is, obviously taken off, and more brokers are incorporating that into one of the requirements for hauling their freight. Can we talk about the benefits of digital load tracking and why carriers should opt in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question, too. And I think it's one of those questions, too. Carriers wonder that themselves a lot. Why is this broker making me get into digital tracking? I think it's a couple things. One, obviously, we want the drivers to focus on what they do best. driving the truck, right? The check-in calls from the broker can be annoying at times, right? And it's one of those things that we understand that, and you think about it too, you're getting updates from not only your broker, the 24/7 department, whatever it might be, that's calling you nonstop. I think the other thing that we think about as well from a digital tracking perspective, customers are making us do this now, right? I think a lot of carriers think that the broker is making them do it. On the back end of it, we talk about technology coming into this workforce. This is one of those things that we're going to see from it, right? That we have to have participation in it. And now customers are paying for a lot of these products. They want to get the back end results of it, right? And that's why the brokers are demanding that they also get the tracking from the carriers. And I think the third thing that carriers haven't seen quite yet, and they're going to see more of it, especially from an NTG company, is going to be what you can do with that information, right? And the one thing that I want everybody to know is we're not trying to track you or find out where you're at or what you're doing. What we're trying to provide is solutions for you, how you look for your next load, how you're being able to be more utilized on your day-to-day, how you can utilize more of your trucks in your network. Those are some of the things that we're looking to do from a digital aspect.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely not, a big brother type thing. I don't think if you've been a broker, and I know I certainly have quite a few friends that are, the shippers are calling you for updates.
Absolutely.
And that that trickles down to the carrier, and ultimately it's like, hey, if we can understand where you are en route, no one has to necessarily be bothered. It's almost, I would think, a value add.
Well, absolutely, and it comes down to this at the end of the day. Time is money, right? And how you want to spend that at the end of the day. I'd rather not have it to be updating my broker every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes. And the big thing is just that warm and fuzzy feeling at the end of the day. Everybody wants to see that breadcrumb on the map.
Right.
Think about it as from a consumer standpoint. When you order a shipment, you want to know exactly where your shipment is through that entire process. It's the same thing for our customers on a day-to-day basis. They want to know where that breadcrumb is.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a great question from Delmar wondering, when you're done with the load, does it automatically cut off?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of those things as well too. We don't want to know what you're doing, right? When you're on one of your loads, that's what you're being tracked for. While you're doing that load, we're hoping to obviously offer you more loads and help you continue your next runs. That way you don't have to worry about those things. But those are one of those things from a standpoint of, are we leveraging this information or wondering if they're at the Cracker Barrel? Those are things that we're not worried about.
I mean, do you care if they stop and they take an extra break as long as they're going to be where they need to be on time?
I want the driver to be as safe as possible. Right?
Can they opt in and opt out en route? So if they didn't need to deliver until tomorrow, and they want to stop tonight, can they stop tracking in the middle?
That's always up to the carrier.
Okay.
It's a decision at the end of the day for the driver. None of these things are forced, right? They can opt out at any single time through the text message or through the applications. But it's one of those things that at the end of the day, I do believe it's advantageous for them to be on these digital tracking platforms.
Right. Ray asks, why don't brokers offer backhauls? And I kind of want to jump in and say, well, I think this is one of those technologies that's going to help offer the backhaul. Like, you understand where they're going, and let's get them loaded to go somewhere else.
Well, it's not even just point to point. Let's think about the next 4 to 5 points, right? And those are some of the things that we want to be able to go back to the carrier. Say you get delivered at 8 p.m., a lot of brokers aren't in, right? Some of that human aspect, some of those relationships that you've built with your brokers, now you're able to do some of the things on the back end through those digital platforms. And not only can you plan your next run, you might be able to plan your next 2 or 3 runs where then you're ready to drive and do what you do best.
Right. Which is what we want for every carrier. Keep them loaded, keep them moving, And Victoria makes me laugh if you saw me laughing because she says I would be at the Cracker Barrel too. So yeah, but I want to break really fast. We have account manager Gary Walker talking a little bit about some of the deductions we've seen recently regarding digital load tracking. He's got some good tips for us. Alan?
So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Hey, it's Gary Walker. Today I want to talk to you about tracking fees. Over the last year here at OTR, we've seen a dramatic rise in short pays and deductions because of tracking fees. So for example, a broker will book you on a load, then they'll send you a notification to allow them to track that load. A lot of people in the industry are not tracking, 1, because they just don't want to, or 2, because of the fear, what will the broker see if I allow them to track me? fear not, they don't really see that much. I've actually logged in with a broker to see what they're able to see, and all they can see is location while you allow the tracking to happen. So you start the tracking and you stop the tracking on your own. So the fees that we're seeing though for the people who are not accepting this tracking range anywhere from $25 to $500. Why leave that money or allow them to take it just because of tracking? So we just want to educate you on this. If you're using Macro Point, whatever it might be, allow that tracking to happen just so that you do not get these short pays, because brokers, love them, but I hate seeing these fees on the back end after you've done your hard work and you've delivered the load. You do not want to see those short pays. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. That was awesome. Drew, in talking about some of these deductions that we have been seeing as we're factoring loads and we're trying to make sure that carriers get paid what they think they are, how do they avoid these deductions for the tracking?
Yeah, I think it's really simple at the end of the day. Obviously, you have good communication with your broker and how that looks. But when you're obviously negotiating the load, or if you're booking the load off of the online platforms, make sure you're reading the rate confirmations. Everything that a broker is going to ask you to do should be clearly spelled out on that rate confirmation and very clear for what you do at the end of the day. I think the biggest thing I think about with some of these digital platforms that we talk about as well too, then it is black and white and very clear of when you are in and when you are out. You know, over the last 15 years, I can't tell you how many times I've had a carrier call me for a 6:30 appointment that arrived at 6:33, right? But they told me that they got there at 6:28. You alleviate all those discrepancies if you're on these digital platforms going forward, and it makes it really simple for you.
Absolutely. And the rate confirmation is your contract with the broker. Hey, these are your requirements. This is what you have to do. So I just want to point out, if you're dispatching for your dad or your brother, your daughter, your mom, whoever, if you have a dispatcher, you need to understand what's on that rate confirmation, because it outlines it for you right there. If you need to opt into tracking, it's going to tell you, and if there would be any deductions, it would be written on the rate contract.
Yeah, and make sure you're always working with a trusted, carrier partner out, or a broker partner out there. To Grace's point, make sure that you read these rate cons clearly and make sure that there isn't any verbiage in there that can get you.
Dawn asks a question. She mentions that, the ELD already drains batteries, and now you add on digital load tracking, and then it makes it hard to keep your phone charged, and, how you make emergency phone calls. Does that seem to be a concern that you hear a lot, or?
I haven't heard that too much, especially with people being able to charge the phones inside the rigs. At the same time, though, too, that is something that you've got to make sure that you're mindful of. At the end of the day, though, that is something as well for us, is if your phone isn't charged or isn't on, there isn't a way for us to be able to digital track you, right? And so I think on your end, being able to charge your phone and making sure that you're doing that on a day-to-day basis is obviously very important.
Great, thanks. As we move on, I kind of also want to talk about now, pick your brain. Can you give us your insight on getting into trucking? If you're a newer carrier, and I've got Dina here asking, a lot of brokers, maybe they don't like giving freight to 26-foot box trucks. Do you think as you get into freight that there is a specific equipment type that you should choose?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you would have asked me this question probably a year and a half ago, it would have been a slam dunk, 53-foot dry van box, right? And that would have been easy. But as I think we go forward, and you talk about the 26-foot box truck, I think you're going to see a lot more freight for that type of carrier, right? Whether it be sprinter vans, cargo vans, 26-foot box trucks. We're even seeing some things from a local, power-only kind of standpoint from these local vehicles as well, too. The game is changing a lot more. Not everything is going full truckload. You're seeing more LTL. You're seeing more final mile solutions. So I think that, when you're looking at what you want to go into, make sure you understand the business that you're going to be attacking. Make sure that you understand the broker, the customer that you're going to be working with. I was talking to somebody about the other day. They were talking about, buying a reefer. It can be the most lucrative thing from a carrier perspective, but one wrong claim or one wrong load, it can be the biggest thing that sets you back from that perspective as
100%.
well too. So I think it's a risk versus reward and where your business is actually going.
Right. If you don't know how to run a reefer, don't pick a reefer, right? I would say that is not the piece of equipment to start out with.
No, I wouldn't start out with that either. But like he said about the 26 box truck, I think those are fantastic ideas right now. There's a lot of freight out there. There's a lot of need for it, and I think it's going to be one of those things as we go forward. You think about us from a consumer standpoint. Now we're ordering everything to our house, so some more final mile deliveries are going to be out there.
So I want to talk a little bit too about the NTG's hybrid digital broker approach. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. You want me to go into
Yes,
detail about
go
it?
right
Yeah,
on
no,
in.
absolutely. So that's one of the things that we're really looking to drive forward. Like we talked about, technology is coming into this industry and it's going to be here to stay. At the same time, though, too, to be able to use these technology products to your best ability, you've got to have a trusted broker that you're working with on a day-to-day ability. And my biggest thing that I say to our brokers on a day-to-day basis is you need to be able to build that relationship. There needs to be trust on both sides so that when you are using some of these technology products, whether it be digital tracking or looking for loads or whatever it might be, you still on that back end have that relationship and really that consultant to help you from a day-to-day perspective to put you in the best spot. I think that's where the broker will live in the years to come, is not so much finding you that load, but consulting you on what's best for you and what's best for your trucking company to make the most money.
That's great. So if you're newer and you're getting in, how do you build relationships with brokers? Is the best thing to get freight off of a load board just to grab what you can, or should you be calling into the brokerage and trying to create a relationship with an NTG broker to find freight?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love you to obviously grow your relationship with NTG Freight, but I would say this to the carrier. You should really look to hone in on 3 to 5 brokers that can really help drive your volume on a day-to-day basis, right? When you think about the 20,000 plus brokers out there today, the ability to be able to find a broker is very easy. The ability to find a broker that's going to be able to get you the volume that you're going to need is something that's a little bit different. And that's why over at NTG Freight, I'm very bullish on what we're doing, how many loads we're moving a day, that we'll be able to find those loads for you as a carrier.
Absolutely. And you're really focused on taking care of the carrier. I know since arriving at NTG, that's been a huge focus. Route optimization, after hours service, and just the relationship in general.
Yeah, the one thing that I want to make sure that we're doing every single day at NTG is taking care of our carriers and drivers. I'm a big believer in what they do on a day-to-day aspect. It is one of those things where I think a lot of the industry is always so customer and shipper focused. But to make this industry go, it's a 50-50 split. Mm-hmm. We need these drivers out there. We need these carriers out there. The one thing that I think about all the time is how can we make it be easier to get into the workforce of being a carrier? And those are some of the things that we're working on a day-to-day basis at NTG to not only improve our relationships with the carriers that we have, but the new carriers that are coming into the workforce too.
Absolutely. Have them coming back,
Yep.
And speaking of coming back, and I'm curious about detention. That's one thing that we always get asked about is how do you ensure that you can get paid detention as a carrier when you're stuck unloading or getting loaded? What are the proper ways to handle detention?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, as I look at it in 2021, to be able to get detention paid for is being on these digital products, right? Whether it be a Macro Point or a Trucker Tools or some of these aggregators that are out there, that is going to be the way that there's no ifs, ands, and buts about if you should be paid detention or not. So I think the simplest way is to use these digital platforms like that going forward.
And just out of curiosity, do you think, in your opinion, should you email the broker and say, hey, before I leave this lot, I want to know, you recognize I've been here for 4, 10 hours, whatever it is, am I getting detention?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'd be probably the most annoying carrier out there. If I was a carrier in your shoes on a day-to-day basis, I would email that rep, I would text that rep, I would make sure every way possible was known that what time I was there, when I checked in, who I talked to. I think getting little details of, what was the name of the person at the guard shack, what was the name of the person at the dock door, what time did you actually check in, what time did you actually get back to the dock door, because I've seen so many discrepancies over the years, like going back to that guard shack. You check in at the guard shack at 6:28, you might not bump a dock door until 6:40 at some of these large facilities.
Right.
Which one were you on time at? Which way are they judging you? So asking those questions up front to be able to alleviate some of these situations as they come up.
And NTG is definitely intending to be carrier friendly and saying if you were at the guard shack versus at unloading, you were there at 6:28.
I can promise you this. NTG is trying to get our carriers paid every single time, whether it be detention, whether it be a TONU, whatever it might be. At the same time as well too, we've got to be able to provide our customers with those facts and that information so we get the money from them as well too. Mm-hmm. Again, at the end of the day, it's our job at NTG to pay our carriers no matter what happens. At the same time though too, we don't want to lose out on money that we can recoup from our customers if it's just done the right way.
Right. And just to mention too, detention, the first 2 hours are free.
Yep. First 2 hours are free, and I promise you right a minute after that, we'll start being charged, and we should be, right? And so should the customer. And I think that's some of the problem in this industry right now, are these long loading and unloading times that are causing some of these issues and causing some of these supply chain issues across the industry.
Absolutely. Delmart's asking me a tough question. He says, does the broker get a piece of the detention?
You know, that's one of those things that, you know, it's a big thing out there that people talk about, right? Is a broker scamming me on this? Are they getting more money from the customer? We look at it this way. We want to pay our carriers out, right? And so at the end of the day, what the carrier requests from us, we're requesting to the customer. At the back end of the day, customer might say yes. Customer might say, hey, this is our detention policy and this is what we paid, right? And so more times than not, we probably lose on some of these because we want to take care of our carrier partners at the end of the day. And sometimes our customers don't replenish us with the amount of detention that they want from a money standpoint.
Right. I've got a great question here. Is it true that once you book with a broker through NTG, is that your broker going forward? In other words, how are brokers assigned to new carriers or carriers at NTG? How does that happen?
It's a great question.
It is.
And so one of the things that we look at is really building the right relationship. I think the one thing that I always tell somebody is I can be the best sales rep in the world, but you might not just get along with me. Right? So we're looking for relationships that actually get along, really dive into, you know, really good questions. Some of the things that I've seen over the years from great brokers is they understand the carrier's family, what they like to do on the weekends, what their favorite sport is, whatever it might be. Those are some of the things that we really want to improve on the relationship. Now, how you actually go about getting the broker from an NTG standpoint, those are some of the things that we decide on the back end, right? Obviously, our carrier reps are going out there to find carriers on a day-to-day basis. Now, once they start to find that carrier and start to load them, we would love to continue that relationship. At the same time, though, too, we want to make sure every carrier that we're working with on a daily basis has a one point of contact that they can get a hold of that carrier. And so it's very important that we assign these carriers in the system until a change needs to be made.
Does an owner-operator also get assigned a broker?
Absolutely.
Everybody does.
Anybody that we're working with, that we're hauling freight with, we want to make sure that you're assigned that one point of contact. That way we can get the relationship started and going right away.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Let's see. I think we want to break now. Normally we're here with Delmar. Delmar missing you tonight, but super excited that Drew is with us. This has been awesome. But we do want to talk about some tips for your trailer. So as far as safety, Delmar brought to us a few trailer safety tips tonight that we want to show you. Here he is.
Hey, I'm Delmar Wood with Rent My Trailer Now. I'm gonna give you a few tips with your trailer to make sure you stay safe and make sure DOT don't bother you. Lights. Make sure you check your lights. One of the things when I was driving, what I did was when I got to a truck stop, I made sure I jumped out while I was fueling or while I was waiting to get fuel, I checked my lights. I did a little 360, I walked around. Or you can do it when you get to the shipper or the co-signee. The lights are so important. This is one of the things that people overlook sometimes because they thought, I check it on Monday, I'm good on Tuesday. But check it every single day, and that's how you keep DOT off your back. Hey, this is Delmar Wood with Rent My Trailer Now. One simple tip you can do here is keep your truck and your trailer clean. This is so important. When you go through the scale houses, when you're going down the road, they see your dirty truck and trailer, the first thing they tell themselves, like, this guy may be running rogue, he's not taking care of his truck, he's not taking care of his trailer. Keep your trailer and your equipment clean at all times. Only costs you a few dollars. Hey, I'm Delmar Wood with Rent My Trailer Now. We're testing out tires right now. These things are so expensive. This is one of the things you can do to test it out. You can get yourself a mallet, hit it, listen for the sound. Listen to this one. Underdeflated. Good tire. Two different sounds here. Get yourself an air pressure gauge. Test it out. If you don't have either, go to a truck stop, let those guys test out the tires, pump them up. It's so expensive if you do not test these tires out and keep the right pressure in them. Hey, this is Delmar Wood with Rent My Trailer Now. Here's your registration bowl here. Make sure your registration is up to date. Here's your annual inspection sticker. Make sure it's displayed in the front of your trailer. Make sure your annual inspection paperwork is in with your registration. It's so important. Make sure you put it in an envelope too, or a Ziploc bag to make sure you keep it from getting wet or moisture or any damages. Hey, this is Delmar Wood from Rent My Trailer Now. One of the things you can do is make sure you got your business name on your front of your trailer and on the back, because someone can steal your trailer, something can happen with your trailer, the shipper or co-signee, and you're not there. They'll be able to Google your information here based off your name and actually get in contact with you. It costs a few bucks, super important. Don't forget it, it's worth it, trust me.
Delmar, thank you so much. You are awesome. And Drew, you are fabulous. Thank you for being here tonight. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd want to say is just thank you so much to all the drivers and carriers that are out there. I know personally I would not be at my point in my career without you. And I know this economy in the U.S. would not be where we are today without you. So I just want to thank you for all what you do on a day-to-day basis. Probably one of the toughest jobs out here in America. And just thank you for everything you do.
I couldn't agree more with everything you said. We love our carriers. That's why we're here tonight. I appreciate you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed to OTR TV, please do. It's great to see you. We'll see you again later. Bye.